Thank you
Awesome.
for making the time. So we're rolling, we're live. If you, not that you need an introduction, but if you'd like to just tell us who you are and what you're working on, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So I'll tell your audience and you a little bit of my background. Um, so I'm originally from Brazil, as your parents are. Both your parents from Brazil, or?
My mom is from São Paulo,
Uh-huh.
and then my dad's a gringo. So
Oh, awesome. Cool.
el so
So
gringo. Yeah, yeah.
I'm gringo by now because I've been half of my life here. So I was born in Brazil, came here for university, did my bachelor's there, started a company right after college. We raised a bunch of money, and it was in the event space. It was called Wigo. We reached around, I think, 60,000 users, weekly active users.
Wow.
Um, the thing though is that we didn't grow, and I think the main lesson that I've learned there is that you need a vision, and you need to grow towards that vision, right? And so we didn't. I think we're not mature enough to do that at the time. So we end up closing shop, returning some money to investors, and then I went to the startup journey. So eventually I moved west. One of my friends who started a company, he's Brazilian too, sorry Brax, he told me back then, you should move to the Bay Area. I was like, I don't know about it. And at the time the Bay Area was, I think, the big center of technology. So I moved first to New York because my girlfriend, now wife, was living in Boston, and then eventually moved to the Bay Area. And there, like, I met a lot of people, joined a startup, end up, running uh, actually 2 to 3 engineering teams. Was the director of engineering of a privacy infrastructure company. Was really into AI, so like I ran, our AI projects, which were very successful. The previous startup also wrote a book about it. Study with Minsky, who created the field, Marvin Minsky. Winston, who was head of CSAIL at MIT, he was my mentor there. Um, um, and then, eventually, my heart was always in crypto. So I joined Farcaster early on, did a few angel investments here and there, but I always wanted to move to crypto, and that's basically what I've been working towards. And now, we have Pinetree, and we release Pinetree to the public, and I can talk a little bit more about what we're building there. But that's a little bit of background about me, why I end up in crypto. I love crypto because it's all markets based. I love markets. If you've seen my posts on Farcaster, they are usually, macroeconomics, things like that, and they're related to markets. And I think crypto brings real markets to the web, and I think that's the huge innovation. I mean, there are a bunch of innovations, right? But that's like the big unlock. But yeah.
No,
um
I've seen a couple of your posts. I'm still new. I've only been to I've been on Farcaster for I think 2.5 months now, so still relatively new. But I've seen your stuff and I love it. I came across Pine Tree. Andrew had reached out, shared with what your vision is, and I immediately was like, we have to get you guys on. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time. And as far as what we can cover, it's up to you. I mean, I would love to talk about your journey of how you got into Web3. I think everyone has a pretty unique case of how they were able to break through. It's not easy to make Web3 a full time job. So, would love to hear a little bit about that from your end. And then also, what got your interest at the very beginning? I mean, was it at uni that really sparked the bug of trying to pursue AI, or was it a bit after? If you want to maybe tell us a little bit about that part of your journey.
yeah, so I mean, I'm like hipster. I loved AI before it was cool, uh, and now I,
Of
I
course.
I love crypto before it's cool. But yeah, so the crypto and like Web3 journey and like Bitcoin. more specifically, journey was in college. There was a Bitcoin group. Actually, my one of the lab mates, like we had a AI group, and one of the lab mates, he was brilliant, and he's brilliant still. Um, Working, yeah. But I haven't seen such a while. But he was mining bitcoins in GPUs back in like 2010 and 11. I was like, this guy is nuts. He was nuts, but he's very smart. He ended up starting a company that froze pig brains. I don't know if you've seen on the internet that like there was this startup that Sam Altman and Peter Thiel backed. That's his startup that was like freezing, and I bet he's still working on that, freezing the
Yeah.
brain so that you can like resuscitate people. Um, so I mean, Marvin Minsky.
That's insane. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry to cut you, but yeah, that's wild.
No, Marvin Minsky was really into that stuff. I actually now believe, like I was into the theory of Minsky that our brain, like AI, could actually replicate our brain. We actually, so part of my book, the exploration was like how the brain functions similar to machines like the neural networks and things like that, but like also how the brain works. And that was really part of my master's, and that's why he started that, because that's like the big focus, that we had there, which as you mentioned, it's like a little bit insane. um but
It's crazy that the
um
things that you were studying are now becoming our reality. What seemed to be sci-fi in 2010, 11, the teens, you look at that in all the I think there was a Scarlett Johansson may have been in it talking about the brain capturing the functionality of it, being able to plug in after death, the things that are now becoming possible. Not saying that we're there yet, but we seem to be trending that way of this level of singularity that was only sci-fi about 5 to 6 years ago.
yeah, and like I mean, that's true. And like the thing that's interesting, Minsky was so ahead of time because he was, I think, the one that created neural networks, if I'm not mistaken. But also he was like, oh, neural networks were not super potent, like super powerful. But then turns out that computers were not powerful enough. um but so like going back to Minsky had the idea that computers could replicate the human brain, I think. And the idea was to basically create, some kind of simulation of the brain. And one big unlock that now people are starting to realize is that for robots and stuff like that, you need simulation. Like you need to simulate the environment. So that's what Tesla is doing. A lot of these robotics companies, that's where they are heading. And Minsky was like very ahead of its time. No wonder he created a field. But the big difference that I now disagree with him is that I don't think AI can replicate us, because we have this thing that I think it's called. I mean, I think it's called consciousness, and the microtubules, which are part of our brain, is like a quantum computer that's basically bringing consciousness into our brain. So I think computers can replicate the same way you have machines can replicate our body. You can have computers that can replicate part of our brain, but like that will and that part of perception is a little bit different, and I don't think we can replicate yet. But that's actually Roger Penrose studied that, which is very interesting. But anyway, so
I don't
uh,
mean to cut you off here,
yeah.
but I do want to stay on the subject because I think this is really interesting. So your belief is that we are not going to be able to ever or just yet. Because if you look at teams like I think it's Boston Dynamics, they've been doing it for years of trying to replicate the human movement. Um, but it always seems like they're just steps and steps away. But are you saying that similarly to that type of project, what um, what you're referring to, your friend, what he's doing with, all of the neurological stuff, are we ever going to be able to get to that level, or is because you said yet, and I wanted to make that a focal
Yeah,
point.
yeah. So I I mean, I think we will have robots that walk around and do stuff for us, like Tesla with Optimus. I don't think that's too far away, maybe a decade at most. Um, but I think the big difference between, like, I think the difference is like the Terminator kind of idea, where the machine becomes aware and has consciousness and does things for like itself. I think that's very different. That's a very different property from like you asking, please do this or do that. Like, um, and you can have machines that carry stuff for you and like write essays for you, but you need to trigger it. Like there is that will, and I think that's the different part. And I don't. My theory right now is that we can't replicate that, and like you would need to
Ever.
replicate. Yeah, and I think that's like it goes to spirituality and things like that, but I think there's an intrinsic property of humans. There's like mind, body, and then the spirit, um, and um, and like we can't replicate the spirit. It's just one way. It's not the other way. Like we can't go from the physical world to that spiritual world, um, and like I think you will need to create a quantum computer, which I think we're like I don't know if we can replicate that with
We're
anyway.
certainly
That's very a
trying
very
to. We're certainly trying to right now, right? And I think this all does, and I don't think we're getting too far off subject because I do. This is going to lead to my next question on just your philosophy and your understanding of what quantum computing is doing, not only for the world, but even more specifically within Web3. Because I think all of these outsiders that I speak to that are interested in Web3, but they see all of the risks and they want to know more about mitigants, and they're like, well, what about quantum computing? Isn't that just going, aren't they going to be able to break the code? That's the my favorite from a normie is like it's just going to break the code. And I'm like, all right,
yeah.
like so before I even give my opinion, I would love to hear yours.
Yeah, I like if you actually go deep into the way they're making quantum computers, like I don't think they can even prove that it's even running properly. So like I think we're like I don't even know if it's possible to do it, like the way that we want these quantum computers to run. It seems that like the world is kind of like this kind of probabilistic world, and when we observe it, it actually it the wave becomes like the light, the double slit kind of like there's a meme where like the guy's not looking, and then when it looks, there are lines, and that's like I think what our brain does, and I think I I I I I don't think that's we're gonna be able to do anytime soon, if ever. Um, and there's a lot of like marketing around like, oh, this is the evolution, and we're this big company that's we're investing so heavily and we're so ahead of everyone else. But when you look at it, it's not like when you look at some of these big tech companies, they can't even make dark mode work. Like it and it's kind of ridiculous, and like, okay, they do have a lot of money. That's true. And so they can run these like very heavy computations. So they can, sponsor, self-driving cars need a lot of computation and things like that. So that's different. Um, that's like, that's very different. And that's why, for example, I think OpenAI was able to run basically, around these big tech companies because um like these big tech companies, they don't necessarily have the talent that OpenAI now has, right? and
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 maybe even the
so
understanding. And I think what could also be an effect of this is the fact that they may have become complacent. There's a lot of
yeah,
bureaucracy that exists in these major tech companies. They love to think that their shit doesn't stink. And then you see someone like Sam Altman. Now, granted, like for better or worse, he's been able to create this thing that is now rivaling anyone out there in Silicon Valley and beyond. And you got to think to yourself, well, how is he able to slip through the cracks? And again, up for debate of how ethical or not it was, but he was able to. So then it gets to thinking, if he's able to do it, and now he's created this thing that's allowing others. I mean, the way that the working force is shifting just within that itself, I don't think that YouTube or, and I'm shamelessly plugging YouTube because of Pinetree, but I don't think that there's these companies that are really thinking just how to utilize some of the technology that's out there because of this complacency of being a legacy tech media. You see it in finance as well with the bulge bracket firms. No one's really anticipated or prepared for what AI, and I would argue as well Web3, are going to do to shift the entire way that we see the world of technology.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like a big part of it. And so shifting a little bit towards, Bitcoin and crypto. And I think that's a like an interesting segue. I came across, Bitcoin. Actually, one of my friends was like the fifth guy at Coinbase. So like I was well aware as well of what was happening there. But he was in the Bay. I was, in the East Coast. But I started coming across Nick Szabo, which is like one of the people say he may be the creator of Bitcoin. I have a very controversial view of who it is. People like on the internet don't agree with me, but I don't care. I think there's enough evidence that I think it's Elon Musk, which is like a little bit out there. But
You think it was Elon?
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, we could talk. We could get into that. I don't mean to cut you off, but yeah.
But like Nick Szabo has like these very interesting essays about markets and how basically the fiat world, the dollar, the petrodollar, has shifted things around, and he has like very interesting essays, and that's when I really got into Bitcoin, because I was like really into economics. I'm like, this makes so much sense. I think the world is extremely broken because of the dollar. And it radicalized me. I'm like, the same way to me that the same way that like I think the government was like together with the church. I think money is now tied to the government, and that's
100%. You'd be silly. I mean, I'm in the same camp as you. You'd be naive not to think so. And I think, just to share and give a level of comfort here, I completely agree with you. This is if you are in Web3, I think you have to have a bit of this stance though, correct? Like, if you're aware of the macro of what is going on with a global economy, there is a major shift that I don't think anyone's one of my favorite theories is that Bitcoin was created by the CIA. That's my favorite conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
And I see it. I could totally see how and why, but there's also a part of me that doesn't. But I don't want to cut you off. I want you to expand on whatever you're about to say.
No, I think there is a case to be made that maybe they created it. But yeah, the world is definitely shifting. And you can see, like the dollar was, this major currency, but it destroyed the American middle class. And like you can see from real assets like houses, real estate, but also finance. And that's why there's so much disparity between people, right? Like there's this clear problem right now, and governments have no incentive of changing it. And that's like, even recently, like people are talking about the deficit, but the country can just print money and buy its own debt. It's like
we were supposed to be cutting spending out of our government. We just added $3.5 trillion to our budget, and then you have Doge, you have Trump coming in here with this beautiful bill. And not to get political here, but I mean, the reality is whatever side of the aisle you're on, right? You have to be a little bit more, at least just objective about the situation. We were promised something that he campaigned on, which was we're going to lower costs. We're going to do a lot of things that we all, I think collectively, maybe not, I could be wrong, but I think we all had this belief that there was going to be change. Doge comes in, starts exposing all of these things. We don't see anything. That, to your point, our government has no incentive to change what is going on. And I mean, even from experience of living in Brazil for a brief amount of time and during COVID, you see what happens to the real. I mean, if you go to Brazil, granted, not to get too granular with it, but I mean the offerings and the way that the economy works down there, it's really like if you go live there, the experience of being in Sao Paulo compared to any other major city around the world, it's not terribly different in terms of like how things operate, right? I mean, it's not. And so you think, how is there so much disparity between what is being produced and generated out of a place like Brazil compared to a place like the United States? And for me, you know, what I heard from Brazilians while I was down there, Gio, is like, well, it's the government. It's just a corrupt government. That was their knee jerk reaction. Anyway, I don't know. You could probably speak to that better than me.
It in part it is, but the other part is the currency, that like the currency is tied up to the government. So like this is the huge difference, and that's gonna be a huge wave now coming to like Web3 because of stable coins and things like that. And I'll talk later on about like how we can arbitrage that opportunity. But like the cost of borrowing money in Brazil for the average Brazilian
It's
is
impossible.
it's much higher than here. And like you get, the average person in São Paulo, right? Like someone that you meet in financial district. How are they that different from the person that's working in the financial district in New York?
Exactly right.
Like it makes no sense, right? Like why does it cost like 30% a year to borrow against, like here in the US you borrow
7%.
to and like you borrow to buy a house, and it's like so cheap, it makes no sense whatsoever. So, and like the big difference is that the US is the world reserve currency, but and that's like the markets part of like Web3. I'll like go to that part later on. But like there, when the market, like when things are market driven, that difference will shrink. And so like in Brazil you have banks that make the most amount of profits in the world, like
BTG,
like
Itaú, like you have really strong banks that are
yeah,
there.
yeah. Funny enough, one of the investors of our startup is like the founder of Itaú. Like the yeah. Anyway, it's very interesting, like how there's this huge difference of like standard livings because of the cost of borrowing money. And like Bitcoin, basically, the creation of it free us from the government. It's like printing press or something of that magnitude. And I think like everyone, like you can, like we speak English, right? You speak some Portuguese. I speak
Un
Portuguese.
poco.
Un poco. Yeah. But like the language that everyone speaks is the dollar, right? Is money. And like that's why I think Bitcoin and crypto are so revolutionary. I think they're a much bigger wave than people talk about AI. And it's like the hot new thing that all the old money VCs are talking about. It's like AI. AI is this huge revolution, which it is. It's going to be massive. But when you look at the Bitcoin and crypto world, if you look at just at the raw numbers, like the growth of that market, since 2008, it's like a $3 trillion asset or $2 trillion asset, depending by the day. Like it has grown so fast. It's the fastest growing technology. And like, why is that? It's because it's money. Like everyone speaks money, right? And that's why stable coins are now coming in. Everyone's going to speak dollar. Dollar is going to be the currency of the web right now. And Ethereum and like these new technologies, obviously you have like the idea of decentralized computing and things like that. But if you look at it at its core at the beginning, it's like bringing markets to the web. So the first application is obviously money. Like that's the first application. And then you have like the DeFi summer, so you have decentralized, finance, borrowing, lending. You have, trading, with tokens and things like that. And that's why there's like this mania kind of like waves. Like you have these bull runs and like it's markets, right? And
It's a
like
market.
what
And to
it's a
expand on
market.
that, the way that it's evolving though is very organic too. So you look at to your immediate response, what's the one thing that everyone can what's the language that everyone can communicate with? It's money, first and foremost, right? I would argue the second would be art, creativity. So you have this
Yeah.
like initial wave of everyone's introduced to this currency. And then you have a second wave where it's like the NFT boom. And you have everyone universally can understand art. And then, like, simultaneously with that, I think, again, I could be wrong, but I think that there's now things like Farcaster. I mean, you and I, we connected through Farcaster, right? Like, I think there's going to be this social element of really fine tuning and figuring out how to tie all of those things together. I think that I would argue is going to be the next wave. Tying the art and the finance piece together through a social platform.
Yeah, and that's basically it, right? Like, and the interesting part of like markets is that people, whenever you interact with a market, you realize it has this like hype manias. It has these bull runs, but like the way you make money in markets is not by like buying and selling the next day. It's by, like Warren Buffett says it best, it's just like buy and hold for the long term. And it's the hardest thing to do it because you lose interest. You're like, I don't know about that. Like that Bitcoin thing, I don't know, there's like something that's like more interesting, or like things like that, right? Like, oh, Ethereum, I don't know, there's like this new interesting thing. But the way you make money in markets, you hold for a long time. You buy something of value, and then you hold through periods, and then when it goes down, like there's opportunity to buy. Um but like markets, they provide a way for people to make money across. And coming to what we're building at Pinetree, and like the big thing that I think also people don't realize is that AI is kind of an incubants kind of technology. Like all Google, Meta, Amazon, they're all playing that game. They're all playing that game. It's like hyper competitive, everyone is playing it. Crypto, like it's not like not everyone is playing because it's a different game. Is the West, like we're going to the West, and like the land is free for grabs, right? And there's like a lot of opportunity, and I think there is a lack of entrepreneurs, investors, because nobody's looking at it right now. Even though there's so much money into it, there's so much opportunity. So like I mean, I talked to my co-founder, Android 16, and we talk about, look, there's like so much stuff that we want to build, and we just like don't have enough time and like to build all of this stuff. And like you look at the other teams, and like they're like kind of stuck. They're not, and we're like, man, there's so much land in here. But if you look at Uniswap or Ethereum, there's no equivalent right now on big tech, right? Because like there's not as much attention, and that's where like that's the big arbitrage opportunity. But anyway, you were gonna say something.
No, I
um
just first off, I agree with everything that you're talking about, and it's really refreshing to have this conversation because, like I was saying, these waves that are occurring, and this third one being the like social push. Again, I could be wrong. This is just the theory I've worked with, is the money, the art, now this like social element tying everything together. And I think that your point about this arbitrage and then this opportunity of being in the Wild West, this is like 1849 all over again, where everyone's pushing to pursue new opportunities, except it's on a global scale. It's not a level of like having this, you don't need to have this like Oregon Trail like piece to it where you have your what is it? your oxen, you're moving with your party through the west to try and pursue new land. Like it's right in front of you. If you have a laptop, if you have a mobile device, if you have the ability to get onto the internet, you have the opportunity to build, right? So they're not short of that. So one thing that you and Android are talking about is the fact that, like, man, we want to build so much, but we just don't have the time or the capability of expanding to do so much. And for me, what I would say to that is like, well, maybe that's not your responsibility. Maybe like what you're supposed to do right now is just build Pinetree to the best of your ability and make this like, the on chain YouTube. I don't want to like pigeonhole you here,
Yeah.
but maybe this is a good segue to speak further on what you're trying to build at Pinetree, and not to get too far ahead or overexpand, but what's been your guys' approach of making sure that you're methodically scaling in a way that you're going to be able to sustain?
Yeah. So I will first talk about Pinetree and like the vision, and then we'll talk about how we're approaching it. So like the vision is very simple. It's for video creators to own their business. So that means owning the relationship with their audience, monetization, and also owning their content. Because right now they're serfs. They rent, their business with big tech. If it's YouTube with Google, if it's Twitch with Amazon, and we just want to give like that business back to these creators. We think they are like the SMB equivalent, the pizza shop or the equivalent of the web. And where like the on-chain part ties it up is because it gives ownership, and that starts with monetization. Like you can move, that relationship, and that's like the decentralized social networks of it, but also eventually owning the content. The tech is not there to own the content. Like videos are like very expensive in terms of like putting everything on the blockchain. Right now we're just doing money movement, and like Auth and Solana, the monolith, they help with like money movement, and that's where we're starting, right? But that's a big idea, and the way we're approaching it, we just released the first version of it, which is very bare bones. You can post videos, you can watch. It's integrated with Farcaster, which is our go to market. But like where things are going to start to be interesting is that direct relationship and that monetization. Like there's a lot of interesting ideas that we're going to experiment there that I think will like people really really like them. And we can talk about them, but like I think the big things that creators care is like distribution, which is like that direct relationship. Right now, if someone subscribes to you, it doesn't really mean subscribing. And we're gonna help with that. We have like emails and also that relationship on Farcaster, but also monetization, and that monetization is direct. And with Web3, that monetization, you have like a market aspect of it. So like you have markets for everything. You have markets for attention, you have markets for coins and things like that, which we'll see how that turns out. But that's where like things start to get very, very interesting. And like if you look at the old players, they're stuck. There's not much innovation. Like if you use an old video player, how much has it changed in the past 5 to 10 years? Right,
Hasn't
not
changed at all,
much.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like we have a really nice opportunity there, because first of all, like that direct relationship, which we can help have have creators have that direct relationship and increase their viewership, but also monetize much more easily, right? So like if you think about I think the very interesting model that I envision a little bit for a little bit of the future. I don't know if you heard of Technology Brothers Podcast Network.
I haven't.
Their TBPN is like John Coogan,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
No, no,
yeah,
no. I know them. I know them.
yeah. So I think that's where like the creation of content is trending towards. not necessarily the monetization, but the creation, where they have live streams, and then you have this creation of shorts that's distributed through networks that are like specifically tailored to what's happening now. And if you think about, the Farcaster interface right now, it's what's happening now, or X, right? It's what's happening now. And for us, we're focusing on a product and a specific market that we think have been underserved. Like, if you look at it, there's basically one or two competitors, YouTube and Twitch, and like we think there's a lot of value. So if you think about the like interviews like ours, I think it's very different from like short form content, like what's happening now. Because like, first of all, the way you like learn something, like I learn a lot more listening to like a long conversation, right? Like, it's like, to me, a good analogy is like long form video is like Whole Foods, and short form video it's like sugar. You can have sugar every now and then, but like, I don't know if you should eat a lot of sugar all the time, because it's not going to be healthy for you. And like long
That's
form
right.
video, you can have this sort of long form conversations and learn a lot. And also, if there's something that's not right, you can actually have a conversation, and like, have that back and forth. It's much harder for you to like, basically sugar, right? Like, change the way our brain works, like that dopamine hit that's like very, very fast.
Yeah,
i'm
and
i'm
I mean,
not
look, you can look at things like TikTok, and you can find a lot of positives that are in it. But to your point, it's sugar. And I think open, long form conversations like this allow us, to your point, have the back and forth, disagreements, find a solution within that, maybe compromise on something that may not align. But I think also one thing that I would love to point out is the fact that it's decentralized, right? When you have this thing called the First Amendment here in the United States, you find how important it is when it starts to be taken away. So look no further than the motherland of Brazil, when more recently it was just shut. X was just taken away, and for a short duration of time, and then there was penalties for Starlink because of that. And again, not even going political here, left leaning, right leaning doesn't matter. When your opportunity to either retain information or speak on information that you have, when that's taken away from you, you really lose the individuality of a society, and that's terrifying. And I think one thing that Pine
100%.
Trees do, one thing that I think is awesome about Pine Tree is the fact that it's going to be on chain. I would hope that it's similar to the protocol of Farcaster. I don't know the intricacies in how it's being built, but I think one thing is that if it's truly a decentralized protocol that allows you to post without fear of being censored, being, shadow banned, or having any of those things occur, then that's amazing. And I think we need more products and solutions like that, because that's what's really driving us forward as a society. Is we need to protect ourselves. I just posted the other night, I started reading Brave New World. I just picked it up, and I posted, I'm just like, I'm terrified about picking this book back up, because it's scary to see how similar society has become, what they described in that book. And I think if we are going to fight the good fight, we need to have platforms like a Pine Tree.
Exactly. And like, actually, I hang out with, I'm friends with this guy that was like the Joe Rogan of Brazil. And he's like, I mean, left leaning, but he was deported. They basically cut out all his earnings from YouTube because he was criticizing the uh like the justice minister. So that's like, that's part of why we're building this. But I don't think it's only that. I think it's more like there's even more nuance to that. Like, as you mentioned, like, there's shadow banning. Like, there's a total lack of control of like these platforms. Like, if I'm a business and I'm creating my business, I should be able to rent a space in a shopping mall or not. But like if the shopping mall owns my business, like it's not my business, it's someone else's business, right? Like I still think like each country should, have its own laws, and like there's always gonna be, a clash between society and the government. But that should be between the individual and the society. It shouldn't be in the matters, like in the hands of big tech, which has like some interesting incentives, right? So like the long term vision is for us to, if push comes to shove, we don't like we can't do much. You need to go to the business and do it, right? Like we shouldn't be the ones controlling, you know who is posting this or who is posting that. It should be like each individual should control their own destiny. So like that's where we're heading. And 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 the way we get there is through markets. It's like Bitcoin, right? Like how did Bitcoin grow so fast? Is because it's like people want to buy it because they believe that this is going to be the new currency, and it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
It becomes this market driven force. And markets are the strongest force in nature, right? Like you can't stop market. You can try it, but it's really really hard. That's why Uber and Airbnb end up winning, because it's like it's very markets driven. But yeah.
And just to further the point, and expand on the philosophy of Bitcoin and why we've seen it grow so rapidly. I mean, it's the psychological element as well. I think, there's this element of FOMO. Oh my, yeah, like it's the buzzword. So now everyone's trying to figure it out. And that's where I'm so excited to talk to you about Pine Tree and, you know, see and you've expressed like what the long term vision is here, but your go to market strategy as well. I mean, and so going back to the point, I'm a bit ADD, but I think thinking about Bitcoin, what drove it to that point? It's the psychology, it's the human element. And so talking about AI, yeah, you have these agents that are creating things like Fartcoin, and still a lot of success has been found in that, but nowhere near. And again, time frame's a little different, but you look at Bitcoin, it started at nothing, and then it was an agreed upon market that continued to drive itself forward. Why can't there be a Pine Tree that is collectively agreed upon? You got to start somewhere, and why not the Web3 community? But then scale out to be a rival, and you've got to think big and you have to be ambitious, right? If not, if you were not on here telling me that, like, no, this is my goal, I want to be able to, compete and hopefully replace at some point the legacy tech and legacy media that's out there. And I think with the ambition, the vision, and the motivation behind it, there's all the reason why you should, so again, that's my little soapbox rant about it. But now tying back in, what is the go-to-market approach of what we saw with this little cult of Bitcoin maxis that expanded it, that has completely changed the economy as we know it today and will continue to? What is the approach that you and Android 16 have? By the way, I love that name. For all of the Dragon Ball Z fans out there, I love that name. But what is the approach?
Yeah, so we're focusing right now to be the best long form video player within the Firecaster ecosystem. But the next steps are to basically help creators distribute and monetize in the best way possible. And so distribution is really important, and that's like the messaging part. So like if someone subscribed, we can let the creator message directly, their audience. The second, so you can think about Substack and things like that, companies like that. And the second part is monetization, and that's where like the markets thing come to play. And we're gonna experiment with a lot of different tooling, but we really think that bringing markets to video creators will be very powerful. So I mean, we can talk about, for example, crowdfunding, sponsorship, and things like that. I don't know if you've seen KRCoin. It's like a very interesting
Yeah, Jake.
concept.
It's very, very
Yeah.
fascinating.
So we really think there's like something there. We have a few very interesting ideas. One that's like remixing content. So um, the most popular video creator in Brazil, the way he got big is by paying people to actually remix his content into short form video. And the ones that got the most view got paid, right? So we're gonna bring that idea and create a product around it. So that's one idea, right? So like we have a lot of ideas there, and the big unlock will be they're bringing markets to creators, to video creators, and how we. And I think that's when I mentioned, look, we have like we have this west that is unexplored, and people are just like creating some ideas that they're they some of them make sense, some of them don't make sense, but you can clearly see that's like a markets driven idea. Fartcoin, like they call the Keynesian beauty
Beauty
contests
contest. Yep.
contests. Yeah, because it is, but there is something there because like it's markets, but it hasn't been implemented right, I think. And I think like we're very close, and that's where when you talk about social and monetization, I think we're like right close by the ChatGPT moment of like crypto, whereas like there is an unlock that's gonna happen soon enough, and we're gonna be there for that unlock, and that unlock is gonna basically explode the market. I mean, we're starting to see with stablecoins that I don't know if you've been tracking it, but stablecoins are basically I think they
Did you
have
see that
product
Circle?
market
Did you
fit.
see what happened with Circle today?
The IPO,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
exactly. So like,
they were about to be acquired by Ripple. Coinbase tried to put their hat in it, and they said the hell with it. We're IPOing, and I think that's so. I think it's admirable, and I think that that's something that's really going to benefit all of us, not just Circle, but I think the entire Web3 space. But anyway, yeah, no, I've been
yeah,
following it a little bit, not enough, but I mean the expansion and how rapidly it's been growing is more than I would have ever anticipated.
yeah. I mean, our lead investor was the lead investor of Circle and like Facebook biggest shareholder. So I mean, we're well aware of it, and we have investors from Circle. The co-founder invested in us. Um, like we think stablecoins are, they finally hit escape velocity, and we're gonna surf the wave of this market-driven approach, right? Of like creators. So yeah, that's basically the idea, and that's what. And the interesting part, Pinetree comes, there's like several meanings. Is that evergreen, and long form video is evergreen. But the second part is about freedom. I don't know if you've seen the flag with the pine tree that in the Northeast they use liberty or death. We have it on our office, like that flag, because for us is like about liberty, right? It's about freedom, and that's why I have the American flag here because
I know, I
you know
saw it, man. No, this
it's
is really refreshing, and I think this is something like, look, you are a first generation American, no? Like you're even born,
yeah, exactly.
you're, yeah, and so same to me. My mom came here um, when she was probably like 7 or 8 years old. So I mean, I'm truly a gringo, right? I went back to visit, but I think one of the things that um, from my grandparents, meu vovô e vovó, like put this like level of they put this level of emphasis on how important it is to be in the United States. And not because it's this like braggadocious thing, but it's like we worked so hard to get here because of what it means to be like what's the ethos of this country? Like you have the right it's what our constitution says for it's the pursuit of happiness, it's the freedoms that you're given here that we're not able to get elsewhere, and when those things are being challenged, it's our duty, just like every other American, to uphold those responsibilities. That's our it's not a how do I put it? It's not a right, it's a privilege, right? And for us to be here and be able to serve our as constituents of our local place, like we need to uphold that. And
Yeah.
you sit here on the sidelines. So I worked on Capitol Hill early on, and I got exposed to, like, the first job I had in my career was working there, and you get exposed to all of these things that you're not taught in school. And then you're like, oh my gosh, so that's how the inner workings are here. Like, that's how the world works on the Hill. And then you start thinking about it and you're like, man, I am just a cog in the wheel. I'm on the sideline. There's no way of fighting this machine that's been created. Right. And then here comes Web3. And that's how I was actually introduced to the space. I was working as a legislative aide for Congressman Mick Mulvaney. And one of the issues that got put on my desk was blockchain technology. So that's how I got exposed to it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the future. This was in 2016. And flash forward, there actually is, to your point, and what we've been talking about this entire time, is that there is an opportunity to create. And I keep going to the American ethos and thing, but like now this is on a global scale. It's no longer just about the borders of the United States. We are a beacon for it, but this is for the entire world to be able to like fight this. I hate to sound so cheesy about it, but it's like this machine of this oligarchy tech conglomerate that's just pushing down on us, telling us this is the way that you need to live. And then you see something like Web3 being the alternative. So for you to have this ambition, to have this identity, to have this persona around like liberty and, having the freedoms that we are given here, we know that this is something that should be expanded across the entire world, right?
100%. And like in some ways, I think big tech is a consequence of money, because there's like so much cheap money. Like big corporations tend to become bigger and bigger, and like these really inefficient machines. And I think that's gonna change a lot. And like only with we have the Bitcoin flag, and we have the Pinetree flag, which is like freedom of speech, freedom to transact, and freedom to distribute. So like we're very market, like I'm a very market driven person, and I think markets are like the most important part. And the thing that I think it's like very misunderstood about markets is that because people see prices go up and down and up and down, is that markets are not about necessarily these like fluctuations, but they are about the trust that you build like along the way. That's how Warren Buffett made money. That's how, like if you look at the people that, really made money, is by this long-term vision that they build over time and took a lot of trust and work towards it. And that's what markets are about at the end of the day. They're not about, like these like meme coins. Sure, they have some part. There's like a part of casino, there's a part of,
Yeah.
but like the real market part of it all is this long-term vision, this long-term value that we're gonna see. And that's like I think where we fit into this picture. But yeah,
And so
that's basically
and
it.
I want but I'm glad you brought this up. And just getting onto the subject of meme coins, they've obviously taken the past 2 years by storm. And you're a believer of markets, right? I believe in free markets. I think you're in a similar boat as me. One of the things that's really fascinating about the meme coin saga is like, yeah, I'm answering my own question. Yeah, they are markets.
Yeah.
But are they really healthy for the long term of things? I think we need to work ourselves through it. I don't know if I believe in the vehicles that exist today as they stand. I think the amount of liquidity that we are given, it really, and it makes it makes the individual really have to understand what they're putting their money into, right? Whereas, if I'm going to the markets today as they stand on the New York Stock Exchange, and I buy the blue chips, or I buy even a more speculative, more volatile, penny stock even, there are still regulations that surround it that instills trust in me as a retail investor to go, okay, I know even if I'm taking a gamble, it's not going to be zero tomorrow or even 5 seconds from now. Right. And so I think I'm not a regulations guy. I don't know if you could pick that up from this conversation here. Like, I am about as like I want as little regulation as possible. I think there's a gray area that it's necessary, but what are your thoughts on like the meme coin frenzy that's occurred? Do you think it's a net positive? Do you think it's really like hurt the Web3, community and scaling? What's the philosophy you have there?
Yeah, I mean, Android has like said something that's very interesting. Like in the Wild West, like the first things that are set up whenever you create a new city is like maybe a bar and maybe you have a casino and things like that. So that's where we are right now, right? It's like very early days. Um, and like for the people that are building for the long run, there might be interesting like concepts there, whereas like look, there's like these ideas, but definitely I don't think that's that's the end game, right? Like the meme coins are not the end game. The long term vision is to bring markets, is to bring, this decentralization, this ownership part to people, and that's where we're going to head towards. um but right now, like the tech wasn't there, so now like we have tech and the infrastructure, and now I think we need more entrepreneurs to build products, and that's why we're here, because we think there's a lot of interesting products that this technology enables. So I think Farcaster is another interesting product, and that's also a protocol. And I think there's going to be a lot more interesting companies forming, especially now that we're seeing more like the regulation is there, and you don't have like teams fighting for it. Like the next wave, the next bull wave, we'll probably see a lot more people join, a lot more interesting teams join. So like one interesting like market driven, like if you think about like interesting projects, Uniswap is one. Another one is like polling market, which is a market is like prediction market, right? So I think we're gonna see a lot more interesting projects there. Like stable coins are gonna bring a lot of interesting ideas, and that's where we also can benefit from, because stable coins allow money to flow freely. But also, if you think about video creators, that they are the SMB creators, like the SMB businesses of the web. But you also have like that money arbitrage. If you have the business there, you there's like a lot of opportunities there. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things that I think is really fascinating, expanding on the point that you're making about what Web3 is offering to young entrepreneurs, is the fact that, back in the day, and it sounds like this is something that you and Android 16 went through with Pinetree, is going and doing a raise is not easy. If you do not
It's
have
not.
prior experience, if you are not coming from Y Combinator or Techstars or any of these, accelerator programs that are offered in Silicon Valley, if you don't have that pedigree, it's damn near impossible as a first-time founder even to get enough capital to go start that vision, that project that you have, until you have Web3, where you see so many ways to innovate the bootstrapping that you didn't have access to. You see these posts on X talking about, oh my gosh, like when I had to use the API here, I ran up my bill to $20,000. I'm a 17-year-old kid just trying to, build a product. It's impossible for me to keep up. But one thing again to, just give praise to Farcaster, the fact that if you are a bootstrapped individual with a couple of bucks in your pocket, you have the ability to go and build a mini app. I mean, you can vibe code it. You can put something together and put the idea to paper, so to speak, and use the platform. Whereas, like, one of the things that I talked to about with the family office, they were one of the earliest. They were back in '06. They created the secondaries market for Facebook. So for all of the execs, that was they kind of made a name for themselves in Silicon Valley by making markets for secondaries. So they were very familiar with Facebook, but then additionally Zynga, right? And so they were the one of, if not the first investor in Zynga. And so they had this experience of understanding what Web 2.0 was. But talking about centralization and things like Pinetree, where it brings so much value to the individual, is when Zynga started outshining Facebook, not that they ever outshined it, but when they really started taking a market share in the attention of Facebook's users, they came to an agreement. If you don't remember, if people don't remember, they just took Zynga off, right? But with the protocol that Farcaster's building, you don't have the ability to do that. And so like you're protected as an entrepreneur and as a founder. You have the ability to build on a very cheap infrastructure cost just by Nanar and building on chain through their social graph and everything. It's giving you the opportunity, and they're truly decentralizing and democratizing the ability to create something. And with that should come competition. And with a lot of competition is going to generate really good products and solutions for the world as we know it.
Yeah, and I think I really like this this sentence that Peter Thiel says, and I always go back to it, that AI is centralizing. He says like maybe it's communist, and crypto is capitalist or libertarian. And you look at it, like what's the company that's like at the top of the game? They have so much funding, so much money, and it's like a very insider game. You know, like Sam Altman, who's like president of Y Combinator. It's like very very insider game. And then you look at crypto, like you look at this, like there's a lot of, it feels like Star Wars where you have like Chewbacca and like Princess Leia, and you have all this.
We're the rebels. We're the rebels against the against, what is it, the Republic.
Exactly.
That's what it feels like. It's truly.
Like you look at, for example, Dex Screener is like a company that was started in Sao Paulo, right?
Was it really? I didn't know
that. Yeah.
Amazing.
So it's like you have all this, very like odd people, but they're like it's the counterculture. And in some ways it's like hip hop, before it became this huge wave. But it's in the technology side. But I'm betting on the rebels. I'm one of the rebels. So hopefully we can make a dent there. But yeah.
I'm fully confident in that, and it feels good to be on that side. Not to make it this polarizing, good and bad guy feeling, but you can't help yourself but feel that way when you look at a lot of the things that are being done in that little cabal. But simultaneously, I think that technology has a place within Web3 as well. You see the way that people are utilizing AI agents. You see things like even on Farcaster, things like Bracky. That's a great tool and a use case for AI. But in Ask Gina is another great one, and I think there's a place for it, but using that in that capacity, right? But yeah, no, I feel the same way. And it's so cool, to your point, just even about Dex Screener, not even knowing that the founders are from Sao Paulo. It's like being able to have the ability to create here. It's truly a meritocracy. If you build a good product, people will use it, whereas it doesn't feel that way in this like legacy tech world where you have to have that. And no shade to any of the Ivy League and MIT educated individuals, but I think the thing that's so special about Web3 is I've never met a more diverse group of people that come from so many different walks of life that weren't this traditionally educated individuals. You get people from all different walks, high school dropouts, kids that didn't even go to school are just cracked at coding. I love that like environment of just like everyone's on a level playing field. All we care about is like, do you have the same culture and beliefs? Are you passionate about the space? Then great. Like you're going to fit right in. And it's really hard to gain that trust of that ecosystem. But once you like kind of punch your way in and really prove yourself to be passionate about it, it's really well received.
100%.
Yeah. But cool, man. I mean, look, we're at an hour. I try to keep it at that length. If there's anything else that you want to cover, we can. And then also, if you have any plugs that you want to tap into for Pinetree, if you want to share anything that's coming up, anything that people should be looking out for? Would love, and I'll post this on the video as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can try Pinetree.so. The product now, it's like, it's the best Farcaster video app, and we're gonna make it like so good. The next iteration will come, in the next few months, but it's gonna be like really great, and we're really focused on making the experience great. If you go to, the Serious Gourmet shit has like some dope music. Highly recommend it. We're gonna make it even better. Right now it's just like, the bare bones, like you can watch long form video, you can upload, but we're gonna make it like great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Like, it was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you, and I'll keep an eye out for the video.
Of course. No, Gio, prazer, mano. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll definitely be in touch. I hope to have you on again, and we could do updates as well, just to, see how Pinetree progresses throughout the months.
Awesome. Thank you. Have
Awesome.
a nice
Thank you.
nice week. All right.
Thank you.
Peace.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right.